Hello. Today I want to show you one position where we are fighting against isolated pawn. So this pawn could be weak, could be strong, depends of in which type of position we are. So now we are in middle game. So still this pawn is a strong pawn. So this pawn on d5 is giving some space for black. So naturally that means that he can put pieces on better place, and as we can see here, black has bishop pair, so he's really strong here, especially if black organize some attack on our king and bishops are looking there, so maybe that could happen in the game soon. Also we can say that White also organized some good attack here, good defense here, because he puts his knights on nice place, and Aronin said that the best blockade piece is the knight, so we should put in front of the pawn knight. This is the best thing what we can do. So both players played for now good game, and we can say that maybe small advantage for White, because it looks like that he has more natural position here, but nothing special. Black also can organize some attack, especially after rook e4. Probably he wants to try to attack on the king side. Okay, so we are looking this position from white perspective, so that means that white should play some good move here. So the best way how we can fight against isolated pawn is when we trade the pieces. So we want to enter in endgame, because whenever we trade something, this pawn will be a little bit more weaker than what he was before that. So that is why for us it's important to trade the pieces. In this position we have already some move what can give us that opportunity. So this is the game between Aronian and Fedoseev. So Aronian knew what to do here, and of course he used that. He didn't play nothing special, but again, the best way how we can play chess is to play simple and effective with normal regular moves, logical move, nothing special. So pause the video if you want and think a little bit, and I will tell you the answer. So first move is knight b5. Idea with that move is so simple. We want to trade. So the knight we can trade him for the bishop. Of course black will move the queen, but we will capture then the bishop on d6. We will trade him for that dark square bishop, and dark square bishop in black position is better bishop. How we know, how we can understand which bishop we should keep alive? That means that we can set if we take a look at our pawns. So pawns are most on light squares, especially one in the center. So this pawn can give us the answer. So he's in the lights on the light square, and that means that we should keep a dark square bishop because light square pawn is covering light squares. Dark square bishop will cover dark squares, so that means that we can cover both squares, I mean both color of squares. So that is why we should keep dark square bishop and to trade light square bishop. So black did that, so he captured on b5, and of course we capture on b5 also, which is normal move. Of course we must play that. Then a6. a6, black wants to push back that queen from b5, so queen d3, again regular move. We want to put the queen more in the center, so the queen is covering also that only weakness in black position, that is the pawn on d5. He's we can say he's also in some position strong, but in some position weak. We know that we will try to trade more pieces, and that, I mean, as white. So that means that we want to create that pawn like weakness. I mean, that will be some potential target in the future for us. So that is why we are going for that idea. We want to trade the pieces and to enter in endgame. Okay, so queen d3, rook from a to e8, and now black wants just to develop his pieces, nothing special. So rook from a to e8. We will see. For now the knight can't go anywhere because the knight is pinned by the pawn, and a rook from a to 8. Maybe not the best move because he can't move the knight for now, and also we can play rook from a to d1, and I mean, if he plays something like queen c6, then again we can play rook from a to d1 and still he can't move the knight. So maybe this is just a little bit a waste of black time. We will see. Bishop d2. Of course, white wants to trade the rooks, so why not? Still, black can't move the knight because of the pawn, so this could be a good move for white. Yes, we are going with our idea. We are using that. We want to trade the pieces. Then queen b6. Queen b6, our pawn is hanging here, and maybe white can wait and to see what will happen here. For example, maybe a3, tricky move, and if he takes the pawn, we have rook from e to b1, and we will set up trap for the queen. But no, black can capture first on e1, and when we capture, or without, it doesn't matter how we will capture, then he can capture on b2, and then when we move the rook on b1, then he can capture the pawn on a3, and we don't have anymore that chance to capture the queen or to set up that trap. So we must move the pawn, and the best thing, if we already forced to move the pawn, and I don't see how else we can defend. If we, for example, if we move the queen, then nobody's attacking the pawn on d5, so he can move the knight, and then black rooks are really strong. We don't want to trade in some conditions that we will lose that activity on the pawn on d5. So we don't want to change pawn structure here. If we take in some moment and black takes with his pawn and the pawn stay alive, then black has really good position then. And at least he has equal position, we can say. So we don't want to improve his pawn structure. That is why we don't want to move the queen from d3, because the queen is giving some pressure on that pawn, and that is why we don't want to move the queen. And what else we can play? Maybe rook b1, but it's too passive. Bishop c1 we can't play probably because he can take. We must take with the knight. Who knows what can happen? So we need to move the pawn from b file. Once when we move the pawn from b2, then we will create one weakness in our position. That will be the pawn on c3. That pawn on c3 will be weakness probably for the rest of the game, because he's on open file for black perspective, of course. And we can say that that is something what black will attack in the future. But there is a problem for black to attack that pawn. This pawn is on dark square. We have dark square bishop, so we can defend him well. And that means that we don't need to worry about that too much, of course. So b4. Instead to play b3, which is more passive, I like b4 here because we will take some space. We will see why that could be important for white. Then black exchange the rooks. Okay, we capture with the rook. We want to use that e file for our rook. Then queen c7. I suppose that queen doesn't have any other duties here on b6, so queen c7, black wants to move the queen from that square, and now, of course, maybe potential target what black can attack is the pawn on c3. For now, this pawn is totally safe, but if black puts his rook there and in some moment use maneuver with his bishop, maybe on e7 and then f6, that could be the problem for white. But this is something what could happen for a longer stage of the game. I mean, not right now, so we don't need to worry about that right now, but we need to think what could happen in the future, of course. If we want to be good players, we need to see what will come in the future, at least 5 next moves, something like that. So queen c7, and then a4. A4 is connected with b4. White wants to take even more space, and final destination of that pawn is not on a4. He wants to play a5, and now he played a5. Idea with that move is now black can't play rook c8 anymore and to control this pawn. That means that also he won't be able to control our activity, because our bishop won't be that passive on d2 anymore, because we can put the bishop on b6 with a tempo in some moment. So that is, for me, I think a good idea for white, because when black play rook c8, we can kick the queen from this place. We will see. It's not that position right now, but this is something what could happen in the future. So knight c6. Black create here, I didn't tell you that. After rook d8, he wants to move the knight from e7. Finally, he found a way how to unpin the knight and to move him from e7, because e7 is so passive, so he wants to put him on some more active square. And then, of course, we can't capture on d5 because there is a bishop h2 and he will capture our queen. I mean, rook will capture, not the bishop, of course. So that could happen here. Of course, we can't capture, so we can play something else. But black is preparing here to attack our weak pawn on c3. So we need to think about that. So that is why bishop e3 here. We can play bishop b6 in any moment. So now we are threatening that because we will capture some material. So black is forced to move something, rook on c8 or queen on d7. If he goes, of course, rook c8, we can capture the pawn for free. So that is why queen d7. And now we again played bishop b6. Again, good move. Why? Because we want to exchange the pieces. This is good for us because we are the side who doesn't have isolated pawn, so only black should worry about exchanging the pieces. This pawn eventually probably will fall in endgame when we exchange the pieces, of course. So bishop b8, and there is no good square for the rook. Here we will trade and then we will take the pawn. So for example, rook e8, queen e8, and then queen d5, we will capture the pawn. So after bishop b6, black decided to exchange the bishops. I mean, to offer the exchange, and of course for white it's okay, that because we want to trade. So bishop takes, queen takes. And now the rook is pinned by the pawn, so again he can't play rook c8 and to try to attack our pawn on c3. Knight d4, we want to trade the knights, that would be nice. If we trade the knights, then I guarantee that the pawn on d5 will fall, because then, for example, what can happen? If he takes, we will take, and I don't know, maybe something like this. We can play rook d1, and now black can't stay with the rook on d8 because we are threatening to capture the queen, and when he takes, we will capture the rook, so he will be forced to take. And when we take, of course with the rook, not with the pawn, because the weakness should stay there. Now in the next move we are threatening to capture here. Maybe he can play something like this, but we will capture, he will capture, and after rook d7 he will be in deep trouble here, because we have more activity. We will capture on b7. Everything because of isolated pawn. So that is why black didn't wanted to trade here the knights. He decided to move the knight on e7. Again, he returns the knight on the place where he was before, and now the knight is really passive. Again, he's just defending the pawn on d5, nothing else. We have great knight on d4. Our queen is on good place, maybe not on the best, but okay. And we have rook who is on open file, which is again good thing. And then rook e3. You see, now we can learn something new. There is no chance for white to take the pawn if we don't trade the knights. Probably there is no chance, because we need to do a lot of maneuvers here with our knight, and still we need to pay attention about what white can do here. And probably even if we attack 3 times, he can hold that pawn, because he can protect also 3 times. So it's not such a big deal. Maybe not here, of course, because of the knight, but something he can come up with some idea how to defend. Probably there is no... I'm telling you now just with theoretically speaking, not practically for this position specifically. So how you can play when you see that your opponent has only one weakness and he can hold that. Many times that could happen in your real games. Then the best strategy what you can do is to create one more weakness if you have chance. You can do that when you attack something else on different sides. So in that way you will split his pieces on 2 sides, and usually then he can't hold. In some moment he will be in a situation that he must give something. So that is why rook e3. I think idea with that move is that white wants to attack on the king side. With rook g3 with knight f5, he wants to trade the knights, or he will attack on the king side. That will probably force black to trade the knights, which is great for white. So rook e3, also clever move, because we are defending our weakness on c3, and we also set free our queen, so the queen can go whenever we want in the future. And then crucial mistake in the game, knight g6. But position for black is passive, and that means that when the position is passive, that side must be careful much more than the other side, because black is not threatening anything to white, so white can play whatever he wants. Of course, he doesn't need to spend the time for unnecessary moves, but some useful moves could be nice. Now knight g6. Please pause the video and try to find good move for white. There is a grandmaster move, I would say, one really nice move, and after that move we can say that black is in lost position, in losing position. He can't improve position after that. So I will tell you now, knight e6. Why this move is so great? We will create what I spoke a little bit before. We will create one more weakness in black position with that move, and of course Aronin used that move to play, so now black is forced to take that knight, because this is double threat, so he will lose some material. So this is only move, and when he takes, we will take, and the pawn on e6 will fall. Both pawns are really weak. Pawn on e6 can't stay there because we have double threat on him and nobody's defending him at the moment. So for example, if he plays e5 to move that pawn from attack, and now the queen is protecting him, we have tempo move, queen e6, check, and in the next move we can capture him. So we will have one pawn more. With more activity, with more natural pawn structure, it should be okay to win this game. So black decided to play queen f7. He wants to enter in rook endgame. Okay, it's okay for white. Let's enter in that. So rook takes on e6, then d4. Finally, black wants to play some active move here. They always want to play such moves, but in previous positions, black didn't have chance for that. With the next move, he wants to open d file for his rook, which is great because on that way he can be active and to attack some enemy pawns. Okay, first we can take the pawn, and now black is practically forced to trade the queens because we are threatening some, maybe rook e8 if he takes here. For example, if he takes here, maybe rook e8, and then difficult position for black. Probably he will be forced to sacrifice his queen here, and we will have totally winning position then. So that is why black capture on g6, and now of course we have a rook endgame with one pawn more. So this is clear winning position for white. But how to win? This is good question. Okay, we played rook b6 to return a black rook on more passive square. So our rook is covering 6th rank. Also he pinned the rook for that pawn on b7. So it's a totally good move. We can say we can't take the pawn, of course, but we pin, or we put, we can say the other rook, I mean the enemy rook, on more passive square, which is great for us. And now we need strategy how to win the game. The best strategy here is what we need to do in every endgame, and that is to create pass pawn. So how we can do that? On the queen side, of course, we can't do that because we are 2 on 2. But on the king side, we have 3 on 2. So that means that we should push the pawns. Of course, we should support that pawns with our king, and that would be probably enough to win the game. So g4 is the first move. Black can't play g5 because of the pawn on h6. So king f7, we improve position of our king, king g2. He played g6. Again, he can't play g5 because of the pawn on h6. And we improve position of our king. Then check, okay, we can cover that with f3. And now maybe some of you will use the king to go on, to put him in the center of the board. But this is not the best thing what we can do here. Why? Because even if we put the king in the center, we didn't create pass pawn. So we need pass pawn. Why? Because when we push the pawn, then a black position will be in dangerous position because that pawn could go to promotion. So he needs to spend more energy to stop that. When he is spending energy for that, we can use that moment to capture maybe a couple of more pawns. We will see. Or maybe we will promote. So that is why a better idea is to play h4. h4 idea with that is h5. Again, weakness is on h6. That is why king g7. But he didn't stop us. We can play h5. And here we are. We exchange the pawns. So now we have that what we wanted from beginning, from when we enter in endgame with one pawn more, we have pass pawn. So now basically we just need to push him, and we will see. So rook f7, we push the pawn, king h7, king g4. Of course, without king we can't push the pawn, so we need that king. Then f5, rook d7, and then rook g6. Rook g6 is a winning move. Usually maybe we don't need that because now in this type of position, I mean in this specific position, we can play rook g6, but maybe in some other position, like when we have one pass pawn, maybe we just need to give him support with our king and that would be enough. But in this type of position, we can play rook g6. It's a winning move because black can't play king h7, then the king is completely cut off. We have a pawn on h5 who is protecting him, so we can push the pawn, and black can't do anything about it. Now we can bring the king. If he checks us, and idea is to take our pawn, we can just move the king, and when he takes that, we can push the pawn, and this game is over because black can't save this pawn from promotion. There is no moves here. Maybe to go here, but now we can promote if we want knight, which is also winning, or just to move the king. It doesn't matter, because if he goes here we can cover that with the rook, or if he checks us in one moment he needs to stop with that. So yeah, something like this. And if he now goes here we can move the king. If he checks us we can cover that, and the game is over. So soon we will promote. That is what can happen if he goes with the king on h7. So that is why in the game was king f7. But now the pawn on h6 is hanging. Of course we should take that pawn, because it's not the same. We will take one pawn, we will lose one pawn. What happened here? Because black played rook d4, sorry, and then after king g5 he captured our pawn. So practically we didn't do anything because we exchanged the pawns. But no, now our pawns are on the fifth rank. So we can't compare the pawn who is on the second rank or on the seventh rank with the pawn who is already on fifth rank. This pawn on fifth rank worth more. So h pawn worth more than the pawn on b7. So now we just need to think how to push our pawns, and that will be enough for us to win the game. So h6, rook a4, and then rook b6. Rook d6 is also winning move, but okay, rook b6, of course, it's also winning. Well, we have winning position. There is a couple of ways how we can win the game always. So rook b7, then rook a1. Probably he wants to check us from behind. Then we push the pawn, and after rook g1, king f5. Okay, now he wants to save that pawn from promotion, but we can play one pretty much simple move. We can't use the king for that because he can check us again, but we can play rook g7, and whenever he goes we will push the other pawn. So king f7, king f8, and then h7. If he goes on h8, then f7. We don't need to worry about some stalemate because there is a pawn who is alive, and there is no way that he can create some chance for stalemate. So rook g7, maybe king f7, but then we can play h7, and after h7 black resigned because he can't prevent rook g8 and then h8 queen. So he will be forced to trade his rook for the queen, but then we will win the game because we have a rook and the pawn, so we will promote. Even if we can't promote, of course we have a rook, so it's totally winning. So what we can learn from this lesson: when we are fighting against isolated pawn, the best way how we can fight against him is to trade the pieces, light pieces especially, because when we stay with only heavy pieces, it would be much easier for us to take that pawn. He's on open file, so practically everyone could play that. We just need to put our heavy pieces on specifically in this type, in this position, we should put the pieces on d file with, if we stay only with heavy pieces, and then in some moment probably c4, and we will capture this pawn. Black should avoid to exchange the pieces, but not in this position, because white used that moment to exchange, and practically without any chance, black played this game. Perfect game for white, nothing special, but still a simple game, could be effective way what we saw in this game. Thank you for watching this game, this lesson. Please subscribe, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.